Thank you so much for joining. And today we're going to be talking about how and why to include a managed blockchain service into your cloud strategy. My name is Daniel Norkin. I'm a co-founder here at Envision Blockchain. So just a little bit about us. If you came to any of the webinars already, you know that, about a year ago, we gave you more of a description as to what we are. So we're just going to flash the screen and just, the best way to think about us is a full service consultancy and a blockchain systems integrator. And kind of reading this from left to right, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but we help out organizations in custom development and other services that revolve around IT and emerging technology. So just highlighting some of the blockchain services from POC and MVP development and functional and technical requirements gathering and mobile, web, UI, UX development. And we're going to talk about this blockchain migration services that you see a little bit further down that list. And also, obviously, talking about a cloud strategy, the modern cloud and on-prem solutions is also something that we're going to put a heavy focus on. We're going to assume that the participants here in this webinar are already, savvy with blockchain. You already understand some of the things that we're going to be talking about. In case that you don't, we offer training workshops, anything from blockchain 101s to tokenization workshops, use case analysis workshops, a whole blockchain discovery day, identity management workshops, so on and so forth. But again, just for this purposes, we're just going to be talking about either blockchain migration services or just, cloud services in general. Again, if this is your first time joining, just to give you a recap of some of the other webinars that we've done throughout the year, done a wide array of different topics from tokenization. I'm just taking a look a little bit deeper in here, all the way through, enterprise blockchain application security, how and why token definitions will affect blockchain adoption, how blockchain networks create innovation and drive the bottom line, et cetera. So during these webinars, we try not to get extremely deep, but really stay high level. So again, if you wanted to check out any of these webinars, please go ahead to envisionblockchain.com/demos-interactions. All right, well, let's get on with it here. So today's agenda, we only have 30 minutes here. So again, we can't get incredibly deep, but I think that, for the main part of this, we want to first define what we mean by cloud strategy. There could be many different definitions. So again, we're going to just lay out that terminology at first. And then we're going to talk about what a typical cloud strategy in a multi-organization environment look like. Again, remember, when we're talking about blockchain, we want to, not just focus on one organization that's using a blockchain, because that resembles, a centralized database, for example, right? We want to spread this decentralized network out to other organizations or other participants, not just yourself, right? So we're going to take a look at how that looks like in a multi-org organization. And also, we're going to take a look at what are some blockchain network components, because again, we're going to be talking about the cloud strategy and how that fits. We're going to quickly talk about a bottom-up strategy, right? So when we're talking about strategy, there's bottoms up or tops down. We'll talk about that. But again, we'll talk about the bottom up from kind of like a feature set, right? And what it could do in a specific type of, I won't say a specific type of use case, but more talking about bells and whistles and features and things like that, where really the lion's share of everything is we're going to be talking about the top-down strategy. So where we're not talking about what sort of bells and whistles, but more of, where should something go? And that's where we're going to focus the big part of the webinar on. So cloud strategy framework from a top-down type of perspective. So what are we talking about when we're talking about enterprise cloud strategy? I think that most people already at this point agree that cloud has become a really core element of an enterprise technology strategy. And really at the core, like it says right here, what we're focused on is, the cloud really consists of all these millions of servers that are distributed across multiple very large data centers that are strategically located all over the world. And there's a lot of different reasons why you would move to the cloud, but right, we're kind of in, we're almost in 2020 right now. So we don't need to talk about, why we're moving to the cloud. I think that we all know why we're moving to the cloud, but the kind of evolution of the thought process, it kind of changed from, if we should move to the cloud to, okay, well, we understand the benefits. We understand that we can scale up and scale down, and we understand that we can be more efficient and we can grow. Now it's a matter of when. But we're even taking it a step further. Okay, we all know that we need to move to the cloud. I think that right now we're in this phase where we're talking about, okay, so then how do I move to the cloud, and what needs to be moved to the cloud? And that's really what we're here to talk about, right? Because when blockchain has been introduced to the world, right, and I'm not going to start to talk about back in 2008 when the first white paper came out, because we're trying to take it now to a point where we're trying to mainstream blockchain. And right now we understand that this is like a digital form of value, right? So if we're going to be moving towards a digital state, so then how can we incorporate something like this that fits within the rest of the cloud strategy? We're going to get to what that means in a second. So just to give you some examples of enterprise cloud strategy when it's done right, AccuWeather has a really nice use case. AccuWeather, really needed to move to the cloud when they're talking about on-demand and scalability. They're all about data and aggregating all the data that they can and then pushing it out to all the different devices and all the different requests that are happening either on the web or through other different types of API calls, if you will. But what AccuWeather saw is that over a couple years over here that they quadrupled to 17 billion requests every single day. And if they were to manage that on their own, that would just be an incredible cost, right? So they went on record here saying that they were able to cut IT costs by up to 40% by just moving to a cloud, right? And then similar with Geico is that they have different SLAs, right? And then you need to have certain type of 24/7 availability across multiple different types of devices as to where the customer is. So again, the move to the cloud gave them that sort of flexibility. And Rolls-Royce is also a really interesting example where Rolls-Royce in the aviation department has been, just accumulating just terabytes of data that's coming from all these large aircraft fleets. With what it says over here is gigabytes per hour rather than kilobytes, right? The more data that they accumulate, the better that they could make the product, right? So by moving to the cloud, they're able to have this sort of scalability so that they don't have to worry about increasing, server size on premises and having the right type of, folks that manage that whole experience. And the purpose of this saying is that, we understand the different technologies that have, that have been kind of moved from on-premises to the cloud. We're going to make the comparison of how that looks like in this blockchain phase, right? So, but in order for us to understand where we're getting to, we kind of have to know where we came from. And that's where this next slide really comes from, right? So we're talking about over here, the typical adopted cloud application component. So again, we're not here to talk about a specific type of use case. But when we're talking about blockchain technology, right, that's just one core component. Like you see here, we have a database. A database used to be on-prem. This is how it worked, right? And then we moved to the cloud. And then we moved from the cloud to a managed database, if that's if that's what is needed in order from, the business perspective. Same thing with web servers, same thing with ERP systems, right? Now we have something like, say, Dynamics 365 or Salesforce that's a completely managed cloud SaaS offering, where before it wasn't, right? So there was this, enormous type of management and upkeep. And IoT devices, the way that they move is via cloud, right? So again, we're not talking about a specific type of use case just yet, but you can start to think about your own type of environment, not even talking about blockchain yet, right? Just what type of technologies are you currently using within your organization? So now we can start to get a little bit more specific, right? So in one particular organization, let's say one specific type of use case, I don't know, let's just take any sort of supply chain type of use case, maybe from farm to table or something like that is a really popular one, right? Just because we all can understand crops grown, crops harvested, crops moved, crops refined, translated into a product and production, put onto a shelf, right? We'll just play with that example. So, on one end of the supply chain, for example, you have an organization that's using a set of technologies for their application. And then you have another organization that might be a little bit further down the supply chain, also using their own set of technologies. Same thing with the third one, and same thing with the fourth one. So what we just done is we just showed here how you have a particular organization that's working with 3 other organizations in order to get business done, right? This is the very basic concept. And on top of that, we're also using technologies that are specific to an organization. But right now, let's just assume that these have had the path of being on premises and moved on to, let's say, cloud technologies, and maybe a subset of them, let's say the ERP system, has been moved to a managed cloud platform, let's say like Salesforce or something along those lines, right? So right now, business is happening. We don't need blockchain for business to happen. Blockchain just makes things more efficient, increases revenue, saves cost, yada, yada, right? So you have emails that are being sent out. You have what they call off-chain stuff happening, right? People are sending emails. People are making phone calls, text messages. You're shipping something, right? This is all manual stuff. Could be triggered through automation, whatever, right? So, now we introduce a blockchain to the world. But before we try to fit this into this example, let's just take half a step back. And now let's talk about what some blockchain components could actually look like, right? So at the very beginning, you have your protocol layer, okay? The protocol layer could include consensus algorithms. It could include side chains, for example, different channels, different virtual machines, right? And this is depending on which blockchain network that you have. And we're not going to get into the weeds for this particular talk just yet, but just know protocol layer incorporates all these parts. And then in addition to that, you also have a network layer. And the network layer talks about how nodes communicate with each other. It could also include some off-chain compute services, for example, like trusted execution enclaves, okay? On top of that, we also have the infrastructure layer. The infrastructure layer, it has containers, for example. It has different storages, disks. It has tokens, if that's what the use case needs. And all of this has to be built by somebody. It's got to be maintained by somebody. And on top of all that, we have other key components to blockchain network components, right? We have our, reading it from left to right over here, we have, let's get my mouse working here. We have here, let's say that there's governance that needs to be done. Let's say that you have new network participants that need to join. You have a legal framework, right? You need to go ahead, make sure that you approve certain changes. You have voting mechanisms that needs to happen. You have support. You need to monitor node health. You need to have, the right sort of iterative builds and what they call CI, CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment for your different pipelines. And then, of course, everything needs to move towards a production grade environment, right? So when you take a look at all these different components that we just talked about, the blockchain now sits in the middle of all of these different organizations within our supply chain example that builds what we call this decentralized application example, right? So there's a couple different ways that it could be done. The first way is what I'm going to refer to, but it's not the ideal way of saying it, but if you were to build everything yourself and you were to string all the different nodes together and you work through what they call CLI commands, right? That's what, we can call almost like on-premises in a way, right? But then you can move it to the cloud if you want to, say, use a solution template, right? Certain cloud providers have a solution template, like AWS, like Azure has these solution templates where you can click a button, add a couple nodes, but once that's deployed, it's deployed. And then, the SLAs sit around the virtual machines. They don't actually sit around everything else that we just discussed that are part of this blockchain network components, right? So, there is now another option where organizations have come up with a managed blockchain platform, right? So everything I just mentioned, all the blockchain components, we can now start to take a look at a bottom-up type of an approach, right? And this is maybe from the, maybe the product managers, this is maybe from the developer type of view. But when we take a look at, what are the managed blockchain platform benefits, is they allow you to have this multi-protocol hosting. So let's say that you're a team and you're experimenting, you can, launch different types of blockchain networks fairly quickly, and there's a wide range of support for more than just one protocol. There's multi-cloud hosting. So let's say you need to have your nodes, some of the requirements, the use case, say we need to have nodes in different cloud providers. Like we need to have nodes in Google and in Azure and in AWS, right, to have a truly decentralized type of view. They also provide enterprise firewalls and encryption features, and adding network participants and nodes with the user interface. So instead of sending command line and other different type of, more for the developer view, you can have a user interface and just click a button, say how many nodes that you need. Network activity reporting, right? So a lot of these managed a lot of these managed blockchain platforms provide this activity reporting, node health, so on and so forth. Advanced tokenization tooling. There's tokenization is becoming a really, really popular trend right now for a lot of the reasons. I don't want to get off on a too far in a tangent when we talk about tokenization, but there are certain managed blockchain platforms that allow very simple tokenization to happen. When we take a look at integration services with other cloud services like ERPs, I think this is a really interesting one to note, because if you were to just create or stand up a blockchain environment on its own, all of the other businesses and all the other services that are part of the business network, they need to be integrated and connected somehow with some of the other applications, whether it's IoT devices, whether it's ERP systems, etc., where if you leverage a managed blockchain platform, some of them come with out-of-the-box integrations with other services. Whenever new versions come out, there's always this automated upgrades and updates and patches. Also, you also have the ability for predictable per node pricing. And then also there's 24/7 support, service level agreements, and all the different support and the SLAs. They vary by the different managed blockchain platform that you choose. And there's enough out there in the market to go take a look through. But this is a bottoms-up approach, right? This is now taking a look at individual features that could really help you out in the application. So now let's take a second step back and let's talk about the top-down cloud strategy framework, where some of the assumptions are you've already defined your business network. and the business network, you've decided that this application is going to leverage blockchain. The use case has already been determined. The prototype or the MVP might have already been developed, right? Because you need to kind of have something developed then to start to get into the next set of framework questions that we'll get through. And then once you have all this, you can now start to utilize what we're going to call the blockchain cloud strategy framework. And finally, right, once you perform the assessment and you have the cloud strategy framework mapped out, you can then use that sort of data to determine whether or not you should keep the solution as is. And we're assuming that, you either host it in a virtual machine in a cloud, or you have it locally, or you migrate to a managed blockchain platform, right? So here's some ways to take a look at that. And the top-down approach takes a look at a portfolio analysis, and you can call this almost like a management set of attributes, where we have this screenshot over here. If anyone's familiar with Microsoft Project Online or Project Server, for example, there's a portfolio analysis module where in the screenshot here, we're showing a portfolio analysis of projects, but you can also replace projects with, let's say, product features. And the whole point of that is that you assign a certain weight and a grading to the different feature set so that you can have this top-down approach from a business perspective to understand what makes sense. And some of these attributes that we're going to get a little bit more in depth over here revolve around performance, architecture, financial considerations, risk, operations, and security and compliance. So let's dive deeper into each one and see what it looks like. So for example, when we're talking about performance, some of the assessment categories are going to revolve around elasticity and scalability, resource intensive, latency, and throughput. Obviously, what we're talking about is once you have the use case already defined, then you need to start to understand what sort of performance are you going to need in order to meet the requirements, right? So, but essentially, we need to understand the scalability, the elasticity, how many network participants are you going to bring in? You start to think about now what sort of rigor is that going to put onto your IT team? Architecture. Will you need a user interface? How do you plan on actually performing the upgrades? What's the application complexity? What's the size of that? What sort of data are we going to be working on? What sort of infrastructure and hardware are we going to be leveraging? Another consideration is on financial. Obviously, there are operating costs and business value, right? If you have a dedicated team that's going to be managing your consortia or business ecosystem, then there's an internal cost for that. Where if you were to maybe downscale that team and you were to move on to a managed blockchain platform that provides a lot of this for you, you could now start to see on some sort of IT cost savings opportunities. And this kind of bleeds into the risk aspect and considerations as well. So, some of them are around organizational, right? So what's your risk tolerance for this sort of an emerging technology? Is this something that you want to continuously educate, train yourself, make sure that your team or within your organization that they have this sort of talent, or are you looking to outsource some of this? Business criticality. How important is it that the network maintains a certain level, a certain SLA, right? And this is kind of matching with the contractual. Whereas if you didn't have that talent internally to manage this complex emerging technology, then using some sort of managed platform until the technology matures, or maybe the skill set matures, it gives you that flexibility to say, yeah, this is a business critical application that our supply chain is running on. We need to make sure that we can, guarantee uptime, guarantee the latest and greatest, and so on and so forth. Operation, same thing. Business continuity. What sort of, disaster recovery plans can we come up with? What sort of tooling and integration? Where does it all fit within the great, scheme of everything that we're doing? And also security and compliance. If you have something running locally, or if you have something that's running in the cloud, in a particular cloud, you may want to move to another type of cloud that has sort of regulations and different privacies and different encryptions, whether it's in rest or in, in transit or something along those lines, right? So this is one part to do. The other part to do is to think about, okay, well, let's say that we decide that we want to migrate off of the blockchain platform that we're currently on, and we want to migrate now to a managed blockchain platform. So we have our, 5 R's that everyone talks about: rehost, refactor, revise, rebuild, and replace. Realistically, what we did at the beginning, when we took a look at a supply chain with, with, let's say, 4 siloed organizations, we completely re-architected a solution where we added the blockchain with some integrations. Now, we may even need to re-architect or maybe rebuild the new solution, because there may be additional capabilities that are now enabled that weren't enabled at the beginning. So this is a major consideration. So again, the 5 R's of migration are 100% in play. So just to recap here, it's really a 2-step blockchain cloud. It's a 2-step blockchain and cloud strategy, where the first one is to take a look at the priorities of the application set of attributes, and then also examine the migration strategy. The way to put all this together, and this is just an example of an application prioritization analysis, this is the scoring that can come out of that, is that let's say that you want to start with the security and compliance, because that's a really important aspect. And you go ahead and you start grading all these different attributes that I was just going off. And you do the same thing with architecture. You do the same thing with risk and with operations. And then you start to take a look at the migration, right? Now you add a certain weight based on the difficulty of the migration. And let's go back. And then there's costs involved, right? So what are the type of costs? What are the users? What are the, elasticity that's required? What sort of network do we anticipate that we're going to be growing over the period of time? What's our business continuity plan? And then, of course, you have to increase this by the degree of benefits. And when you get that, you get some kind of app valuation score. Essentially, what you could do from that point is you can have this prioritization analysis matrix that really takes a look at 2 different planes. The first plane is suitability to migration, and the other one talks about potential benefits. So obviously, the ones that are in the upper right quadrant, start there, and then go for some quick wins, obviously. So, definitely, we really hope that you all appreciated this. And this is a different way to go ahead and take a look at, the blockchain networks. And we're all trying to come up with different frameworks and how to analyze what needs to get done, whether we're going to do this, internally, we're going to outsource it, we're going to grow our team, we're going to move to a managed blockchain. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There is no one true, honest answer. But in the event that you do decide that you do want to do this migration, there is a service that we have begun to go to market with, where we're starting with Microsoft Azure Blockchain Service, which is a managed blockchain platform that's hosted in Azure and built by the Microsoft Blockchain Engineering team. So we do provide a Azure Blockchain Service migration with that talks about really everything that we discussed in this webinar, starting out from the migration assessment, all the way through migration execution and post-migration support, should there need to be any sort of integrations with any other systems that happen afterwards. And at the current phase right now, we're currently supporting an Azure Blockchain Service, the Quorum Ledger, and also Corda. More definitely are soon to come, and there's definitely other managed blockchain platforms that are on the roadmap. Thank you so much. We really look forward to next year and all the great webinars that we plan on putting out. And see you all next year. Thank Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.